Hello beautiful people and welcome. In today's video we are discussing all of the possible angles that are formed by intersecting lines. There's going to be two main questions for this entire unit. First question is what do you have? Second question is what do you mean? So when you see a question, you need to be asking yourselves first, what do I have? And then what does that mean? There are keywords or key terminology that you need to memorize. Yes, memorize. Create flashcards. If you don't know what these words mean, there's no way for you to know what's going on. So you have to understand what these words mean. So let's start with vertical angles, this one here. Now, vertical angles are angles that are formed by an intersection, meaning you have two lines that are intersecting, that cross over. And vertical angles are angles that are opposite each other. So what's really special about vertical angles is that their angle measure is congruent. So notice how I am creating these tick marks, and the number of tick marks are the same. So angle 1, this angle right here, let me see if I can do angle 1 is congruent or equal in measure to angle 2. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. They are equal in measure. So how would you write this down? So vertical angles are congruent, and those are angles opposite each other. So we have the measure of angle 1, congruent. So congruent is going to have a symbol of equals with a little squiggly line on top. So the measure of angle 1 is, well, let me actually take that back. The measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 2. The measure of angle 3 is equal to the measure of angle 4. Now, sometimes you're going to see that squiggly sign. So squiggly signs are also known as like congruency. So you can say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. Notice that I removed the M when I am talking about congruency, but when I am talking about the measurement, I place the M. So this M, this is how you read it. Measurement of angle 1 equals measurement of angle 2. Now this is how you read this. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Now again, what does congruent mean? Congruent means the measurement are the same. The measurement is equal. So what do you have? You have vertical angles. What does that mean? That means the angles that are opposite each other are congruent or equal in measure. Now let's talk about a linear pair. A pair, when you have a pair of something, that means you have two. So you have two angles. Here's angle 1. And notice that now I have two different. So angle 1 has one tick mark or one angle mark. And angle number 2 has two tick marks. That means that angle 1 and angle 2 are not congruent. That means the angle is different. They are not the same. But what does linear pair mean? Linear pair means the angles add up to 180 degrees. That means that the angles are supplementary. So, what do we have? We have linear pair. What does that mean? That means that the angles are supplementary angles. What does that mean? That means that the angles add up to 180 degrees. Okay, now what does that mean? That means the measurement of angle 1 plus the measurement of angle 2 equals 180 degrees. Again, what do we have? We have supplementary angles. Excuse me, what do we have? I already messed up. What do we have? We have a linear pair. What does that mean? That means we have supplementary angles. What does that mean? That means we have angles that add up to 180 degrees. Next keyword. Oh, wait, it's a linear pair as well. Oh, let's go ahead and do another linear pair. What do we have? So let's pretend linear pair is not here. What do we have? We have two angles that are not congruent because this is one tick mark, this is two tick marks. But notice, you guys, here's pretty cool. Here's a line. Do you see how this is a line? And something that we learned already, a line is 180 degrees. So that means that a linear pair are just angles that form a line. So what does that mean? So linear pair means that we have supplementary angles. What does that mean? That means that the angles add to 180 degrees. So what does that mean? That means that the measurement of angle 1 plus the measurement of angle 2 is equal to 180 degrees. What do we have? A linear pair. What does that mean? Supplementary angles. What does that mean? That means we add up to 180 degrees. And what does that mean? That means angle 1 plus angle 2 is equal to 180. Now we have supplementary angles and complementary angles. Complementary angles are angles that add up to not 180 degrees. Instead, they add up to 90. So you have angle 1 here and you have angle 2 here. Together, they form a right angle or a 90-degree angle. So when you have complementary angles, they are angles that add up to 90 degrees. What do you have? Complementary angles. What does that mean? They add to 90 degrees. What does that mean? That means that the measurement of angle 1 plus the measurement of angle 2 is equal to 90 degrees. Now we mentioned the word congruent. We mentioned the word congruent. So congruent, we said this a few times already. Congruent means equal in measure. So equal in measure. That means the measurement of two things are equal. Now for congruent, you have a symbol. You have a little squiggly line and two lines underneath. So you have an equal sign with a squiggly line. To know if something is congruent, they have to have the same number of tick marks. So when we're talking about angles, the quantity of marks will depend on if it's congruent or not. So let's do some vertical angles here. So vertical angles are angles that are across from each other that are congruent. So let's say I have angle, I don't know, let's say 6 and 7. These are not the angle measurement. These are the angle names. And let's say we have the angle 7 congruent to angle 6. How do we know this? Because they are across from each other. What does that mean? That means they are vertical angles. And so to show that these are congruent, I just have to do the same number of tick marks. I can do 1 tick mark. Maybe I'll do 2 tick marks. Maybe I'll do 3 tick marks. It doesn't matter how many tick marks you do, as long as the same quantity of tick marks is the same. Now let's say we're not talking about angles. Let's say we're talking about like a side of a triangle. Let's say here's a triangle A, B, C, and I want to show that the side AB is congruent to side BC. So same thing here. Here's AB. I'm going to put a tick mark there. BC, I'm going to put a tick mark there. It doesn't matter how many tick marks. As long as these are the same quantity, that means those two sides are congruent. So if I wanted to do 2 tick marks, I do 2. What about 3? Sure, let's do 3. What about 4? Sure, let's do 4. As long as they have the same quantity of tick marks, that means these two angles are congruent, these two angles are congruent. Okay, let me wrap up what we learned so far. We have, what do we have? Vertical angles. What does that mean? Angles opposite each other, across from each other, they are congruent. What does congruent mean? That means the measure is equal in measure for congruent. What do we have? We have a line and we have angles. We have a linear pair. What does that mean? That means these angles are supplementary. What does that mean? That means we add the angles that make this line an equal to 180 degrees. What do we have here? We have another line. What do we have? Linear pair. What does that mean? Supplementary angles. What does that mean? That means angles that add up equal to 180 degrees. What do we have here? We have a complementary angle. So I'm going to show you just a little bit here. So yes, we can make this into a line. And I'll show you one more example before we end this video. But this here is a complementary angle because angle 1 and angle 2 together give you 90 degrees. So maybe sometimes you'll see like a little square here to show you that this is in fact 90 degrees. That is complementary. Now let's go back to something like this before we end. And let's say we do have something like this. And so what do we have? Well, what does it mean? So I have a 90-degree angle. So that means I have a complementary angle. What does that mean? That means an angle that equals 90 degrees. I also have a line. This here is an example of supplementary angles that are not linear pair. So linear pair means you have two. So linear pair means only two angles. Add to 180 degrees. If you have more than two angles, like for example, this example here, if you have more than two angles, we just call them supplementary. And those are the angles that still add up to 180 degrees, but you can have more than two. Okay, so what do we have here? So let's talk about this real quick. What do we have? We have complementary angles. What does that mean? That means we have angles that add up 90 degrees. Which angles, what does that mean? That means the measurement of angle 1 plus the measurement of angle 2 is equal to 90 degrees. Now, what else do we have? Well, we have supplementary angles. So supplementary angles, what does that mean? That means we add up to 180 degrees. So that means here's my line. So angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3, all three angles equal 180 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3 equal 180 degrees. Vertical angles, linear pair, complementary, supplementary. Those are 4 words. Oh, 5, congruent. You need to know what congruent means. 5 words that you have to memorize. Memorize those words. And then I will give you more words to memorize. Please make sure to memorize these. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!